You think this is funny. This is not funny. This is a serious violation of HOA rules.
This HOA nightmare. Karen destroyed my trash can 57 times with her $60,000 Escalade, so I replaced it with a concrete one and watched her destroy her own SUV instead. What started as early morning property demolition ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one very expensive life lesson about picking the wrong neighbor to bully. Picture this: the sharp crack of plastic shattering cuts through the dawn silence, followed by the metallic scrape of a bumper grinding against asphalt. A pearl-white Escalade speeds away, leaving my garbage scattered like confetti across the driveway again. But here's the thing about bullies. They never expect their victims to fight back with actual concrete evidence. By the time I was done, this self-appointed compliance officer had wrecked her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and learned the hard way that some neighbors refuse to be intimidated by clipboards and fake authority. Seriously, what would you do if your neighbor was basically playing demolition derby with your property every single morning? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see if this kind of HOA madness is happening in your town, too. But let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Marcus Holloway. I'm 45 years old, and I've been an electrician for 22 years. Recently divorced, fighting for joint custody of my two teenagers, Zima, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA neighborhoods in suburban Ohio, where everyone's lawn has to be exactly 2.5 inches tall, and mailboxes only come in 3 approved colors. I bought the corner lot 3 years ago, right after the divorce papers were signed. I figured it would be a fresh start. The kids could have their own rooms, good schools, a safe neighborhood. What I didn't figure on was dealing with Brenda Whitmore. Brenda is a 52-year-old widow who decided to appoint herself the neighborhood's compliance officer, a title that doesn't actually exist in our HOA bylaws. By the way, she drives a pearl-white Escalade, bigger than some studio apartments. She moved in about 3 years ago, after her husband passed away. No kids, retired from managing a bank downtown. The woman knows every HOA rule by heart and treats our monthly dues like her personal slush fund. She's best friends with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which basically makes her untouchable. Now, here's where geography comes into play. My corner lot means trash pickup requires me to place my bin near the street every Tuesday morning. City ordinance says it has to be within 3 feet of the curb, which puts it right at the edge of where Brenda takes her daily power walk at. Exactly 6:15 a.m., the first incident happened on a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I'm getting the kids ready, coffee brewing, the familiar diesel rumble of the garbage truck still 20 minutes away, then crack, the sound of plastic exploding like a gunshot. I rush outside to find my trash can obliterated, garbage scattered across the driveway, like someone detonated a confetti bomb filled with banana peels and coffee grounds. And there's Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down the window with this fake, concerned expression. "Oh my," she says, not a trace of sincerity in her voice. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing. I had bought it the week before for $23 at Home Depot, but I kept my cool. I figured it was an accident. Spent 20 minutes picking up soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters, while the smell of diesel exhaust hung in the morning air. Emma and Tyler watched from the window, embarrassed that their dad was crawling around the driveway in his pajamas. That first week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine, 6:15 sharp. The rumble of her oversized engine, the sickening crunch of plastic meeting steel, then silence as she drove away. By Friday, I was getting suspicious. By the following Tuesday, I knew it was intentional. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed exactly what I suspected. "She takes the long way around on purpose," she told me in her careful English. Plenty of room on the other side, but she drives close to your can every time. I tried reasoning with Brenda first. Caught her on the sidewalk during one of her afternoon patrols. Hey, about the trash can situation I started, but she cut me off with this saccharine smile. Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments? Placement timing adjustments. Like there's some magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't need the can at the curb. That night, I started digging into property rights, HOA bylaws, and municipal ordinances. Turns out trash cans placed on the public right-of-way still count as personal property. Even more importantly, our HOA has no rules about timing or materials, just that bins can't be visible from the street, except on collection day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 trash cans at a total of $92. The kids were stressed from the daily drama, and my custody evaluator was making notes about neighborhood stability issues. Something had to change. That's when the smirk started. Brenda began making direct eye contact during her morning demolition runs. This little satisfied smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. 2 weeks into October, Brenda escalated from property destruction to psychological warfare. I came home from a job site to find a certified letter waiting, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. The thick paper felt expensive, and the smell of fresh ink told me this wasn't some form letter. Improper trash receptacle placement, creating a traffic hazard. It read, in legalese. That would make a paralegal proud. Section 4.7.3. No obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. Deadline, 72 hours to fix the violation or face $50 in daily fines. She'd clearly rushed this through the system, while the board was still reeling from my documentation at the last meeting. Here's where my years of troubleshooting electrical codes came in handy. When something doesn't add up, you dig deeper. That evening, I dove into municipal law like I was tracking down a short circuit. After 3 hours of cross-referencing city ordinances with county regulations, I hit the jackpot. The city code explicitly requires trash to be placed within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. More importantly, HOA jurisdiction ends at the property line. They literally cannot regulate the public right-of-way. I remembered reading about a similar case online where a homeowner in California beat their HOA, using this exact argument. So, I spent the weekend building my defense like I was prepping for the electrical contractor's exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera, $47, perfectly positioned to capture the morning routine. Professional survey confirmed my placement was fully compliant with city requirements. Mrs. Olivia's written statement, shaky hands as she signed it. I don't want trouble, she whispered. But this isn't right. Meanwhile, Brenda was busy playing prosecutor on social media. She flooded the Nextdoor app with posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles, forcing responsible drivers into oncoming traffic. The comment section turned into a battlefield, her 3 loyal supporters against everyone else, who thought she'd completely lost touch with reality. Then came the twist that showed just how desperate she was getting. A buddy of mine at City Hall, Dave, works in the permit office, called me Tuesday morning with some interesting news. The city had received 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner. Each claimed a different witness perspective. But they were all obviously written by the same person. The timestamps all submitted within 15 minutes, set to 47 a.m., professional detective work. This was not Marcus, Dave chuckled, either. Your neighborhood has an epidemic of insomniacs with identical writing styles. Or somebody's working overtime to build a case against you. By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The community center smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and decades of boring municipal meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, a record crowd. HOA President Gerald Thornfield was nervously adjusting his tie every 30 seconds. Brenda sat at the board table wearing a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business." But I noticed the slight tremor in her hands when she reached for her water glass. She knew what was coming. When they called for old business, I stood up with my documentation. "I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as the room went dead silent. I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word, displayed my survey results proving compliance, and the coup de grace casually mentioning my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney who had handled dozens of HOA cases. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting, I added, watching Brenda's face go pale. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before finally speaking. "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing, and everyone knew it. But Brenda wasn't done. As we filed out, she cornered me in the parking lot under the buzzing security lights. That's when she really showed her true colors. "My name's Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, an electrician by trade, and a dad full-time, whether I'm on the job or not. After my divorce, I bought a corner lot house in Pinewood Gardens, Ohio, thinking it'd be a fresh start. The place looked like a postcard version of suburban life: identical lawns, mailboxes with 3 approved colors, and neighbors who wave with exactly the right amount of enthusiasm. My kids, Emma and Tyler, finally had their own rooms. I thought I'd solved everything. What I didn't account for was Brenda Whitmore. Brenda is the type of person sitcom writers invent when they need an over-the-top villain. Except she's very real, and somehow worse. She drives a pearl-white Escalade the size of a yacht, knows every HOA bylaw like scripture, and crowned herself compliance officer, a title that doesn't exist. She's best friends with the HOA president, which makes her feel untouchable. And apparently, she has a personal vendetta against my trash can. The first time it happened, I figured it was an accident. It was a Tuesday morning. The kids were half-dressed for school. I was halfway through my first coffee when I heard the sharp crack of plastic exploding. I ran outside and found my brand new bin obliterated. Garbage sprayed across my driveway like someone had set off a confetti cannon. There was Brenda, easing her Escalade away, rolling down her window with this fake sweet expression. "Oh my, these streets are so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing. I'd bought it the week before. But I bit my tongue, cleaned up the mess, and convinced myself it was a one-off. Except it wasn't. That same week, Tuesday morning, came again. And so did the sound crunch, scrape, silence, another trash can destroyed. By Friday, I was suspicious. By the next Tuesday, I knew it was deliberate. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed it in a whisper. She has plenty of room on the other side. She drives close to your can every time. That's when the war began. By the second month, my trash can budget was starting to rival my grocery bill. 3 cans down, nearly $100 wasted, and I was spending my mornings picking up soggy cereal boxes like it was part of my daily workout routine. I started documenting everything: photos, timestamps, even video clips from my Ring doorbell. If Brenda wanted to play demolition derby, fine. I'd play court reporter. But she wasn't satisfied with just flattening my bins. No, Brenda decided it was time to weaponize the rulebook. One Tuesday, right after her usual 6:15 a.m. drive-by, I found a bright white envelope taped to my door. Violation notice. According to Brenda, my grass had grown to a dangerously non-compliant 2.75 inches, a whole quarter inch above the HOA maximum. The horror. A week later, another notice landed, this time about my mailbox. Heritage blue had faded into what she called unauthorized, weathered navy. And just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, she cited me for 3 tiny tears in my window screens. Honestly, you'd need a magnifying glass or a NASA telescope to even notice them. Each violation came with a $50 fine and a 10-day deadline. It was less about community standards and more about financial harassment dressed in official stationery. The kicker: I took a Saturday stroll around the neighborhood with a tape measure and my phone camera. Gerald Thornfield, our illustrious HOA president, had grass pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox looked like it had survived a decade-long paint famine, and half the houses on Maple Street had hail-damaged screens that made mine look brand new. Yet somehow, I was the only one getting flagged. Word started spreading. You could hear it in the whispers at the community center and see it in the side-eyes people gave Brenda on her morning patrols. It wasn't about grass, or mailboxes, or screens. People were starting to realize what this really was: one woman on a power trip, using the HOA like her personal sledgehammer. And if there's one thing bullies hate, it's when the crowd starts paying attention. It was a random Tuesday at Home Depot when I ran into Dale Kowalski, a contractor who's been pouring concrete longer than I've been alive. Over coffee at the contractor desk, I mentioned my trash can troubles, and his weathered face broke into a grin. "You know, Marcus," he said, stirring his cup with a paint stir stick, "there's nothing in city code that says a trash container has to be plastic. As long as it holds garbage and meets the size requirements, you're golden." That was the spark. By Friday afternoon, my garage looked like a DIY set from Mythbusters. 60 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar, and a standard plastic shell. From Home Depot. Emma and Tyler thought it was hilarious helping me stir cement while classic rock played on my old paint-splattered radio. The smell of wet concrete brought back memories of helping my dad pour our basement floor decades ago. That sharp, alkaline scent. That feeling of permanence. The design was simple but effective. Hollow bottom for weight distribution, drainage. Holes for function, outside identical to every other trash can on the block. From the curb, it looked completely normal. But on the inside, a steel-reinforced fortress just waiting to teach Brenda's Escalade a physics lesson. Monday morning, I wheeled my new creation to the usual spot. 6:15 rolled around, right on schedule, along with the familiar growl of her oversized engine. But this time, her approach was slower, more cautious. Maybe she sensed something was off. Then came the collision. 15 miles an hour, her standard ramming speed. Instead of that brittle crunch of plastic, the sound was a deep, satisfying thunk, followed by the screech of metal meeting concrete. Her Escalade's running board folded like a soda can. My trash can didn't so much as flinch. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee mug warm in my hands, as Brenda sat there, confused, for a full 30 seconds. Then she tried again from another angle. Same result. More dents in her SUV, zero damage to my upgrade. By the end of the week, her car looked like it had been through a demolition derby, while my concrete can just sat there smug and undefeated. The neighborhood noticed. Whispers turned into chuckles. Teenagers started timing the collisions like it was the Daytona 500. Brenda thought she was making a point, but all she was really proving was that you can't win a fight against a brick. By mid-November, Brenda had gone from neighborhood tyrant to full-blown private investigator. Her Escalade, now covered in dents and scratches, kept circling my block like a suburban shark. Mrs. Olivia called one morning in a nervous whisper, swearing she'd seen Brenda in my driveway at midnight, flashlight in one hand and what looked like a bathroom scale in the other. She was trying to weigh my trash can. I nearly spit out my coffee, picturing her in her navy blazer and sensible shoes, crouched in the dark, running a late-night episode of CSI, Garbage Edition. But she didn't stop there. She cornered our maintenance guy, Jim Torres, at the hardware store and grilled him about who had been buying unusual amounts of concrete. She started lurking on my Facebook, scrolling through old posts for clues like I was some criminal mastermind, leaving breadcrumbs and photos of weekend projects. The desperation was showing, and honestly, it was hilarious until she tried to weaponize the city again. One Thursday afternoon, a weary inspector named Pete knocked on my door. He explained Brenda had filed a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures on my property. I walked him around to the can, and after 30 seconds of inspection, Pete just shook his head. It's a trash container, not a foundation. No violations, no permits required. Honestly, I've seen people build entire sheds with less attention. He left, more annoyed at Brenda than me. That weekend, I got pulled aside by Patricia Lopez, one of the only sane board members. In hushed tones near the community center coffee station, she dropped the bomb. "Marcus, Brenda's been meeting privately with Gerald. She's pushing for expanded enforcement powers, property inspections, contractor background checks, the works. And she's been pushing hard for maintenance contracts with a company none of us have heard of." That was the missing piece. I went home, opened the city's public records database, and started digging. Within an hour, the pattern snapped into place. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed just 6 months ago. Owners: Brenda Whitmore, 40%. President: her late husband, Richard. Since May, the company had landed 7 HOA contracts: landscaping, sidewalk repairs, playground touch-ups worth more than $23,000 each time. Whitmore underbid competitors by $50 to $100. Not enough to raise flags, but just enough to guarantee the job. And who approved every single contract? Brenda. 7 votes, 7 payouts, straight into her own family's pockets. Suddenly, the trash can war wasn't about garbage at all. It was about covering up a scam. By December, I had a folder so thick it could stop a bullet. Photos, video clips, violation letters, property surveys, even Mrs. Olivia's trembling handwritten statement. I had Brenda's midnight trash can wins, her bogus complaints, and the racist outburst she'd hissed in the parking lot, every word recorded in crisp audio from the phone in my pocket. And thanks to Patricia's tip, I had the smoking gun: 7 HOA contracts, $23,400 funneled straight into Whitmore Construction, with Brenda rubber stamping every single one. The next board meeting was standing room only. The community center reeked of burnt coffee and industrial carpet cleaner, but the tension in the air was sharper than anything I'd smelled before. Neighbors whispered in clusters, waiting for the fireworks. President Thornfield fiddled with his tie like it was choking him. Brenda strutted in wearing her navy blazer, trying to look confident. But her hands shook when she reached for her water glass. When they called for old business, I stood. "I'd like to address the violation notices regarding my property." The room went silent. I laid it all out: city ordinances, survey results, video evidence of her collisions, the pattern of selective enforcement, and then the coup de grace. Whitmore Construction. 7 contracts, 7 approvals, 7 payouts. Brenda's face drained of color as I read the numbers aloud. Gasps rippled through the room. Mrs. Rodriguez muttered, "I knew it." Jim Torres leaned back, arms crossed, grinning like he'd just watched the final twist in a telenovela. Even Thornfield couldn't spin it. He cleared his throat 3 times, then croaked, "This matter requires further review." Translation: they were cooked, and everyone knew it, but Brenda couldn't help herself. As the meeting adjourned, she cornered me under the buzzing security lights. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "People like you come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Well, this is just the beginning." The racial undertones were clear as smoke, and my recording caught every word. It was the final nail in her coffin. Within weeks, the board voted to suspend her authority. Investigators dug into the contracts. She ended up facing criminal charges for embezzlement, settling for $12,000, and watching her precious Escalade sit in the shop with nearly $10,000 in self-inflicted damage. As for me, I still take out my trash every Tuesday at 6:15 sharp. And every time I hear that rumble in the distance, I smile. Because sometimes, the best defense against a bully is building something they just can't knock down.